welcome back to the Profitable Franchisees podcast. My name is Tracey Leak and I'm your host. This is the podcast where we share strategies and stories to help you to become a more profitable franchisee. And today, you're with me today. I'm going to talk to you about the 5 biggest mistakes that I see franchisees make. And this is over the last 20 years when I've been working with franchisees, franchisors, and entire franchise groups. And there's a couple of common things that franchisees do that are going to hold them back from their profitability. And they're really simple things not to do, okay? So hopefully when you go through this list, that you will hopefully tick them and say, hey, I'm not doing that. And if you are doing that, then it's a really quick and easy course correction. None of the things that I'm talking about are rocket science or even hard to comprehend or to fix, but they are going to have a massive impact on the profitability of your business. So the first one is pretty simple, and that's when franchisees simply don't follow the system, okay? So an analogy that I give when I do initial franchise training, so for some franchise groups, I might come in and do a day of training for them around sales and marketing and business basics from an outsider's perspective. And the thing that I always tell the brand new franchisees, I'm like, imagine that if every day your job was to leave your house, you had to walk half an hour down the road and you had to go to the shops and you had to buy certain items. And when you finished, you carried those items back. Now, a couple of problems with that. The items you have to buy are heavy. It takes you half an hour to get there, half an hour to get back. Sometimes it's really hot. Sometimes it's rainy, it's windy. There has to be a better way. There's got to be a simpler way to do this. So you go out and you buy a car, okay? Lovely car, air conditioning, nice seats. Maybe you've even got seat warmers in it. It's got a big boot so you can put in all the groceries into the back of it that you have to pick up. So you've gone and bought a system or a process to actually make this job easier. Now, on your way home, you're probably going to take photos of it, share it on Instagram and tell everybody about this great new car you bought. You take it home and you put it into the garage. So you've just invested a lot of money into buying this car, take it home, pop it in the garage. You go home, you sleep the night, the next day you get up and it's time to do your job. And then you start walking to the shops. Even though you've just bought the car to make it easier, you start walking to the shops. And this is what I see franchisees do. The car, the vehicle, is the franchise system. And so they've invested this money to make life simpler. Doesn't make it easier. You know, business is never easy, but it's also not hard. It's simple. We've bought something, invested in something to create a system and a process to make it simpler, yet we don't use it. You know, I once coached a guy who won Australian Franchisee of the Year, and I remember when people asked him what was his secret, you know, and that wasn't just from within his own brand. Other brands were calling him, franchisees from other brands were calling him saying, what did you do? Why are you so successful? And he said, well, it's 3 things. I'm good to my team, I'm good to my customers, and I follow the system. And they're like, no, what's the secret? What's the secret? And he's like, I'm good to my team, I'm good to my customers, and I follow the system. Sometimes you need to stop and think about what things in the system you've actually changed. When I'm working with a franchisee and they seem to have got off track a little bit, usually I find that they've stopped using some of the systems and principles within the franchise. And now the reason that they do that is sometimes it's just like, oh, well, I just get a little bit lazy and it's a little bit slack to do that. But it's actually the systems and processes that actually make things happen. Even though it might feel like they take longer to do, sometimes there's some hidden benefits underneath the system. And so making sure that you're actually going back to those processes, that you're doing the things not only operationally, but also think about marketing, thinking about working with your team, thinking about you as a business owner. You know, does your franchise system provide you with a business plan and you've just stopped using it? Do you stop using your field support manager or business coach or whatever they may call it in your franchise system, you know, your performance coach? Have you stopped utilizing that person? Don't think a system or a process is just the operations manual. Sometimes it's the greater things within the franchise. Do you know, I notice massive difference in franchisees' businesses if they don't go to conference, okay? And then there's also a second part of people who go to conference but don't actually be there. You know how you can turn up to something and you're there and you smile and you talk and everything else, but you're not actually participating, or you're not actually trying to learn or ask better questions of other people. This is all part of the system. There's a reason why it works. There's a reason why you have a conference. It's not just for fun to get you all together. There's actually purpose behind that. And are you actually utilizing it? So remember, the system is not just operationally. Sometimes it's also about the people and the events that are happening and the things that are available to you. You know, are you using your learning management system? Are you using the checklists? There's all of those things in place to actually help you. Now, the second big mistake that I see franchisees make, and this is probably, if I had to choose one out of all of them that's going to be the most detrimental to the profitability of your business, it's this one. And it's absolutely 100% in your control, and it costs absolutely $0 to fix this problem. And what is it? Well, it's having a negative attitude, okay? You're going to go through ups and downs in business, but it's how you react and respond to when things are going right and when things are going to go wrong that are going to make the biggest difference in your business. And I see this happen time and time again. You might have a really successful franchisee, and then for whatever reason, they've got negative. Something has happened and they've got a bee in their bonnet and they've decided to get really narky. You will see their business drop off, sometimes plummet in profitability. And sometimes it's just a slow decline, and over time, all of a sudden, it's like, what happened to that business? It was so great. And now it's disappeared. It's just not at the level it was. And this all comes back to that franchisee's attitude. You know, you have to be solution focused when you're in business. There is going to be problems. You can't get around it. There's always going to be obstacles, challenges, problems. You know, I always say that if everything's running perfectly in your business and life, quick, sit down, have a cup of tea and enjoy that 5 minutes, because that's probably how long it's going to last. There's always moving parts. There's always things that you're going to have to course correct. There's always going to be problems, some of them little, some of them big, sometimes multiple at once. But it's how you actually handle that from a mindset point of view. Now, I'm not saying you need to have a rah-rah positive attitude, okay? Sometimes that doesn't work either. But you've got to watch what you say out loud, but also what you're saying in your head. You know, we all have that little negative voice in our head. I call her Lulu, okay? You can give them a name. And we all have it. But are you actually listening to that voice and taking it on? Okay, so I often say you've got to talk to yourself, not listen to yourself. Because if you're listening to yourself, you'll often have that negative voice in your head that's the loudest. And so sometimes you need to talk to yourself, especially when you're going through a problem. Now, I even do this out loud, maybe not in front of a whole lot of people because they might think you're weird, but I'm like, okay, Tracey, let's calm down. Let's work this out. What's the 3 possible solutions? Because when I actually start talking to myself, I get it back into logic. When I'm listening to myself, it's all that emotional stuff that's trying to, you know, in a way, it's trying to actually protect you, but it's not helping you. So having that negative attitude, we've got to really turn that around. And for some people, that's working really hard. You know, when I started, I had a bit of a negative attitude, okay, because that's what we're taught in society. You know, you've got to complain. You know, I love it when I go places and everyone's complaining about something and I'm like, I don't know what to say because I've got nothing to complain about, okay? Things are going pretty well and I'm happy, you know, like people are always looking for something to complain about. But you've got to stop and start listening to how you're talking. So I started with that as an easy one. In Australia, it's very common when people say something to you like, you know, how's it going? You go, oh, no worries. Well, what you're actually telling yourself is that you have worries because you're saying no worries. Our brain can't compute that no or the not. Like if I said to you, do not think about a white elephant. Do not think about a pair of cowboy boots. Do not think about the Olympic rings on the flag. What pictures flicked through your mind when I said that? So even though I said, don't think about a white elephant, you thought about a white elephant, right? And this is what happens. when we're saying these words out loud, we're computing that in our subconscious, in our brain, and it's taking a life of its own. You've got to really talk in a positive mindset. If something's going wrong, okay, great. There's always a silver lining. How can we solve this? What can we do? You've got to be solution orientated and thinking positively. And you've got to be careful about how you talk about other people, because sometimes that can bring you down. By saying negative things about other people, you should always be talking positively about someone else. And I catch myself, it's human nature. We all do it, but don't make it a habit. So we've got to start thinking positively. The other thing that will affect your attitude, especially in a franchise group, you can only control what's in your control. And if you go back and listen to the interview I did with Ben Davis from Athlete's Foot and City Cave, he actually talked about that as one of his success principles as a multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee, was to only focus on the things that he could control and let go of the things he wasn't in control of. I see a lot of franchisees get a negative attitude, especially about the franchise system and the franchisor, about things that are not in their control. There's actually a benefit to why you purchased a franchise. But you've got to remember that means that you've handed a little bit of control over to someone else. And if you can't handle that, then you shouldn't be in a franchise group. But realize that the franchisor's not your enemy, okay? They're not making decisions to hurt or harm you. The franchisor's major role is they have to protect the brand. So they might make a decision. They might make a choice on something that doesn't particularly suit you personally. But you know what? They've made that decision because they might have another 100 franchisees that they've got to look after, and it suits them. So every now and then, you've got to let things go. Pick your battles. Franchisees who get negative, all of a sudden, every time the franchisor or anyone from head office makes a decision, or even when other franchisees or the advisory council makes a decision, they're just against every single decision. It doesn't matter what they say, it's going to be wrong. I can tell you right now, you need to get out of business when you get to that point in time. That might sound harsh, and I bet you anything, those people are not listening to this podcast. I can guarantee it. They're not listening. So we're not going to harp on it because you guys are actually thinking the right way because you're looking for more information. But the trick is because I've just mentioned that and we've talked about that, you're probably not on here if that's your way of thinking. Don't hang around with those people, okay? Move away. The best thing about a franchise is you can talk to all the other franchisees. The worst thing about a franchise is you can talk to all the other franchisees. Don't get stuck with them. When I was a franchisee, I once was at conference, sat down at a table, and then one of the most negative franchisees in the group happened to sit at my table. Now, the session hadn't started, and they sat at my table, and I just sat there and I went, am I going to be able to handle all day with this person who's going to be negative about every single thing that someone says? And I'm not joking when I say every single thing. If there was a guest speaker who's been paid thousands of dollars to be there, they're going to tell us how they could do it better or what they said wrong. So you know what I did? I packed up all my stuff and I picked it up and I said, hey, I'm just going to go sit over here. Didn't explain myself. I didn't say anything. I just said, hey, I've just decided I'm going to go sit over there for a better view. And I picked up and I went and sat at another table. I didn't say, I'm moving because you're negative and I don't want to sit with you. I just made the decision. I just quietly packed up my stuff and said, hey, I've just decided I want to sit over here. And I just picked up and moved. And wow, am I so glad I did that? Because I actually landed on a table with another franchisee who gave me one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given. So control what you can control. In that instance, I could control where I was sitting. I cannot control the attitude of negative franchisees, but I could definitely control whether or not I wanted to be a part of it, if I wanted to associate with them. That old saying, especially when you've got other negative franchisees, don't argue with an idiot because you just end up with two idiots. So don't try and change their mind or anything else. If they're not being detrimental to you, then move on. If they are being detrimental to everyone, don't be afraid to stand up and say, hey, can we get this back on track, guys? Because this is not helping me to be more profitable in my business. I think we've just got into a negative spiral. Can we just take 5 minutes and go, instead of complaining about this problem, can we take 5 minutes to brainstorm how we could solve this problem? Don't be afraid to be the person to stand up and say that, because this is going to impact your business. So first of all, you don't want a negative attitude for yourself, but also you don't want to hang out with the people who've got negative attitudes. Be solution focused, be positive, always moving forward. We all make mistakes. Move on. It's okay. And there's this thing that's called collusion. You may not have heard of this term before, but it happens a lot in franchise groups. So something happens and then a whole stack of franchisees get together behind closed doors, or they have conversations with each other, or WhatsApp groups, or they're sending text messages to each other, and they start to create this negative bubble. They start complaining about something, and it starts to drag more and more people in. And it usually starts with one franchisee. I call them the franchisee who is going to turn into, they think that they're the mayor of the franchisees. They think that they have to stand up and fight for the franchisees, even when they're wrong. And this is what you've got to be careful about, that you don't have someone who's doing it out of ego, that they're trying to rally it up. Sometimes you've just got to step away and say, hey, I don't want to be a part of that. I know you guys have got a problem with it, but I don't have a problem with it. Let's just get on with it. I was in a franchise conference where the franchisor, it was a big mistake. They should never have done this. They did it. They were kind of shocked, like, how that did not go the way I wanted to go. But at the start of conference, they got up and announced that they were changing the services of the franchise group, that they had, they had basically 3 core products, and they decided that they were only ever going to support one moving forward, that they saw that was the future. And, if you were as a franchisee wanted to still support the other 2 products, you could, but you weren't going to get any support from head office, and they weren't going to have them on the website or anything else. Bit of an issue, okay? And it blew up. And it was not the right decision, to be honest. And especially since they did it without any franchisee consultation. But when it came to lunchtime, I found this group of franchisees. There was about 60 franchisees, I think, in the group. I found a group of about 8, 9, 10 franchisees who were sitting around at lunch saying, right, how can we move forward with this decision? What can we do? All the other franchisees were just colluding with each other and complaining and dragging as many people in as they could to that negative attitude. Whereas this group said, hey, what can we do? How can we move forward? So sometimes someone else is trying to put their thoughts onto you and try and get you onto their side. It's a bit of a tug of war. I've once said to someone, I said, are you trying to get me to collude with you? Because I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make a really informed decision, and I'm going to stay solution focused. Are you learning here that it's not necessarily always about a negative attitude that's going to bring your business down? That's your own. It might be someone else's, and it's learning how to stay strong. It doesn't mean that you sit up on your high horse and say, hey, I'm almighty and I'm positive. I listen to people. What's their concern? Tell me what's happening. So I get all sides, but I make an informed decision and I look for a way forward. How can we be solution focused? So the third thing that I see franchisees do that's a big mistake is they're simply not organised and they're not following a plan. They're just sort of turning up, working day to day. And this is going to affect your profitability greatly. Okay, the best way to increase your profitability is to be organised and have a plan. I actually do this little activity when I have a group together. And I won't go into what the activity is, but the whole purpose of this activity, it's all about how can we do this process faster. And the key to that whole activity of how can we get a result faster is being organised. The more organised the group gets, the faster they actually move. And the same thing happens in franchising. When you're running your franchise business, you need to be organised. And being organised means you need to have a plan. And it's not just goals, it's an action steps. What do I need to be doing? What's my systems, processes? What's my rhythm? What are the things I'm doing each day or each week? Getting organised and having a plan will actually help you to be more profitable. Yet the number of people I see who don't do it, it's incredible, all right? So everything we've talked about here, none of this is going to cost you any money, and most of it is just a change in behaviour. I always say it takes no extra effort to smile and be happy than it does to be sad and frowning, okay? It's the same amount of energy and levels. You're just making a choice of which one you want to be. You can choose to be sad and miserable, or you can choose to be happy and moving forward. The choice is yours. So the same thing is you can choose to be disorganized and have no plan, or you can choose to get organized and have a plan, but that's what will be the difference in your profitability levels. So the fourth one, this one's a little bit different. And again, probably you guys listening to this are probably going to have a bit better of an attitude because you're actually seeking out more information to help you grow and build your business. But I find that a big mistake that a lot of franchisees make is their expectations on the franchisor, what they expect as a result. And the problem is it often changes. Okay, they go through different phases. So what they first wanted from the franchise group might be different. And this is also impacted by that attitude as well. If people have got a negative attitude, they often expect way more from the franchisor. And sometimes those expectations are unrealistic. I had a franchisee who just yesterday, right? I was coaching him yesterday and they were talking to me and they were talking about their local area marketing. And they said, and this is what they said, the franchisor needs to find an alternative to this marketing process because I don't like it. And I went, okay, but we know, and this is their number one local area marketing strategy that we know that works. It's just the problem is it's a little bit out of some of their comfort zones, but we know it works. I said, why would the franchisor have to find an alternative for you because you don't like it? And the franchisee was a bit shocked. They got a bit of the unreasonable friend Tracey with them where I was just like honest with them. I said, why is that their responsibility? We know that this marketing strategy works. Do you agree? And they said, yeah, but I just don't like it. And I said, great. It's like kids don't like eating vegetables, but we know it will keep them healthy. I said, if you don't like it and you don't want to do it, then what are you going to do instead? And they said, well, I just think the franchisor should be bringing us all of our business. I was like, okay, well, that's a bigger problem once again, because it's not the franchisor's responsibility to bring you business. Okay, simple as that. Yes, some have national marketing campaigns. A lot of the national marketing campaigns are more around branding. You should be focusing in local area marketing around direct response. But in the end, whose business is it? It's your business. If you're sitting in the passenger seat of the vehicle, then don't complain to the driver. If you want to be in a business, you need to sit in the driver's seat. This is your business. You need to drive it. And sometimes the expectations that franchisees have on a franchisor, it's not helping their business, as in it's not helping the franchisee's business. Again, these expectations lead to a negative attitude. All of these things are interlocked. And so therefore, it will actually stop you from growing and moving forward. So really think about your expectations. You know, I once had a couple who were married and they were in business together. And I can remember the wife was actually the primary breadwinner. She was the driver. She was the owner of the business. And they were having a few marital issues. And even though I said to them, hey, I'm a business coach, not a marriage counselor, I said to her one day, I said, if he just does a load of washing, makes a dinner one night, does the dishes for you, does that help you? And she's like, well, I don't know. And I said, well, think about it. If he wasn't in the picture, would you still be running this business? And she was like, yep, absolutely. And I said, great. So anything he does that helps you anywhere in your life is actually going to help you to move forward because it's one less thing you have to do. Because if you were on your own, you would have to make every meal. You would have to do the dishes. You would have to do the washing. So let's give him a little bit of a break here, all right? So think about that. Would you be in business with or without the franchisor? Because if you're in that business, then start having a positive expectation of the franchisor. Start working with them rather than against them. So this comes up especially around marketing because a lot of people think, well, I've joined a franchise, so therefore leads should just come to me. Customers should just come. No, the most profitable franchisees probably have some of the best local area marketing strategies in place, as in quality and quantity, to actually grow and build their business. If you want to grow your profitability and you're not currently doing local area marketing, fantastic. What a massive opportunity for you to grow and build your business. Okay, so the fifth and final mistake that I see franchisees make is they simply don't know their numbers. And when I say that, they might be doing their weekly sales figures, but they don't know how to read a P&L. They don't understand how their numbers relate to each other. So, I was working with a franchisee who said, I want to grow my business, so I need to do more marketing. So I actually sat with them and we went through their numbers. So we looked at their conversion rate. We looked at the number of inquiries they were getting every week. We looked at the profitability on each of their different products and services. We looked at their expenses. We looked at their wage costs. We did a whole analysis. And the long story short, what we actually worked out was for them to grow their business, they didn't actually need any more inquiries. They had enough coming from their marketing. What they needed to actually work on was their conversion rate. And in particular, they needed to work on their conversion rate from a first-time customer to a second-time customer. Because once they became a second-time customer, they usually came at least another 5 or 6 times without them doing anything. So it wasn't that they needed to do marketing. They could have gone and spent a whole lot of money on marketing, when in actual fact, what they needed to work on was their conversion rate, how to take those leads or those inquiries and turn them into customers, particularly the first time. And so if they could get them to do that, so get them to buy once and then get them to buy a second time, that's what I mean by first-time customers. Okay, so conversion rate was twofold, was to get them to buy the first time, but also then to buy the second time. This did not cost them a cent. They did a bit of training with their team. That's what they did. So it cost them a couple of hours of team training. But what it did was it massively impacted the profitability of their business. I was speaking to a franchisee that I'm working one-on-one with the other day, blew my socks off. We were talking about their different marketing strategies, and we talked about the 3 types of marketing strategies they had coming in. So we talked about referrals. We talked about they were running some Facebook, Instagram ads, and also just their Google inquiries. Okay, not paid Google, just organic Google inquiries. And the franchisee was able to tell me the conversion rate on each of those strategies. So it wasn't just like, hey, my conversion rate's 50%. Well, no, on referrals, it was like 75%. On Google inquiries, it was around 60%. And on Facebook ads, it was around 30%. So we actually could make informed decisions to grow their business more profitably. So understand not only your numbers, don't just understand reading your P&L and understanding what your sales figures are or what the numbers are on your dashboard. A lot of groups do track conversion rates or number of inquiries. They track, gross profit margins. It's good to understand those numbers, but if you truly want to be profitable, you want to know how they all interrelate to each other. And so therefore, you're making decisions to grow your business in a more profitable way. So really getting to understand your numbers, and you should be able to, at any point in time, be able to give an almost close enough roundabout to that exact figure. If someone asked you, if I said to you, hey, what's your conversion rate at? You should say, oh, it's currently sitting at about 55%. Okay, it's not like, oh, I think it's about 60 or 70%. You need to actually track and measure this, because these are the things that are going to help you to make the decisions to actually grow and build a more profitable business. So that brings us to the end. That's my 5 biggest mistakes that I see franchisees make. As I said, some of them you might be able to look at and go, nope, I've got that one under control. And that's what I hope. Remember, validation is just as good as learning something new. So we also want to think about how you can improve each of these areas to help you be more profitable, and how to make sure you don't fall into the trap of finding you're in one of these 5 mistakes. So go back and have a look at them. You might subtly pass this podcast on to your franchisor if you find that there's a whole lot of negative franchisees who need a good kick up the butt and be told, hey, let's start being solution focused. That's not uncommon. But I want you to get really good at understanding these things. Have a plan, know your numbers, be solution focused. Don't expect too much from everyone else. Take ownership on your business, remembering to move forward, and also remember to follow the system. Okay, I'll talk to you guys next week, and we'll have a new interview for you next week. So keep tracking along. If you're not yet subscribed to the podcast, hit subscribe to wherever you're listening or watching this podcast right now. And remember also, if you want to jump on to the Franchisee Profit Pulse, it's my newsletter that comes out fortnightly. You can get that at my website at traceyleak.com. and the link is in the show notes to my website as well. But that accompanies the podcast. So I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Keep listening and remember to share it around to other franchisees because let's help more people. All right, guys, see you next week.